Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
The Galactic Council chamber did not rest on any world. It floated in deliberate neutrality, an artificial construct suspended in orbit above the luminous ocean planet Virelia. From a distance, it resembled a crown of crystal thorns encircling a hollow sphere, each spire humming with gravitational stabilizers and shield harmonics. It was designed to endure supernova shockwaves, civil wars, and the collapse of empires. It was not designed for shame. Inside, the chamber was vast beyond human architecture, 3 kilometers from floor to vaulted apex. The ceiling shimmered with projected constellations marking member territories. 62 luminous sigils glowed in slow rotation, each representing a civilization older than human recorded history. At the center stood a circular dais of black stone, and on that dais stood Ambassador Elias Rhine of Earth. He was aware of the scale difference immediately. The Thalrex delegation towered nearly 3 meters tall, armored in layered bioplates. The Avens perched along crescent perches suspended midair, feathers iridescent beneath council lighting. The MYRR existed as translucent columns of light within containment fields, their bodies flickering in complex emotional spectra. Elias stood alone. No armor, no visible augmentations. Just a dark Terran diplomatic uniform, tailored with precision. The fabric contained microfilaments and emergency nanomedical injectors, precautions Earth had insisted upon, but nothing that could be mistaken for a weapon. He had argued to come alone. If we arrive escorted, he had told Earth Security Council, they will interpret it as threat posture. Now, beneath the gaze of civilizations that had mapped hyperspace before humans discovered radio, he wondered if that decision would be recorded as courage or naivety. The chamber lighting dimmed to formal proceedings level. High Chancellor HFY Era descended to the primary platform, borne on a disc of controlled gravitic lift. The Thalrex leader scales were deep obsidian, edged in copper along the ridges. A crown of sensory frills encircled his skull, twitching subtly as environmental data streamed across his perception. Ambassador Rhine, the universal translator rendered, overlaying the Chancellor's sibilant native speech. You stand before the Galactic Council to answer for unlawful expansion. Elias inclined his head, not a bow, but not defiance either. Humanity stands ready to clarify its position. A faint ripple of luminescent laughter flickered through the MYR delegation. Clarify. The word hung in the chamber like an indulgence. HFY Era extended a clawed hand. The holographic star map ignited above the dais. Dozens of systems flared into visibility, yellow and red markers pulsing. 3 Terran colony fleets entered Thalrex-registered space within the Perseid corridor. Terraforming protocols initiated without council authorization. Atmospheric alteration commenced on 2 worlds. Elias looked up at the map. He had memorized it. The Perseid corridor was listed as uninhabited and unclaimed in Council Registry 7A 441. He replied calmly. Human survey vessels confirmed no extant biospheres beyond microbial extremophiles. Our terraforming does not violate sentient habitat preservation accords. Aven feathers rustled sharply. The Thalrex Chancellor's frills flared a violent red. You interpret law to your advantage, HFY Era said. You breed in exponential curves. You alter planets as if they are raw material. We adapt, Elias said. We survived ice ages, plagues, extinction events. We adapt because we must. And what are the Thalrex frontier garrisons displaced by your presence? Elias met the alien's unblinking gaze. Your garrisons were positioned to project future claim, not to defend current populations. A murmur swelled. Chemical clicks from the Keth, harmonic vibrations from the aquatic lore. He could feel it turning. Not on legality, on fear. Humanity had entered the galactic stage only 2 centuries prior. In that time, they had colonized aggressively, innovated rapidly, and demonstrated an unsettling capacity for technological leaps under pressure. Their AI systems were considered dangerously autonomous. Their military doctrine, while officially defensive, was layered, redundant, and opaque. They were young, Young species were unpredictable. HFY Era leaned forward. You expand faster than any species in Council history. Your reproductive rate alone destabilizes demographic equilibrium models. Elias almost smiled. With respect, Chancellor, we cannot apologize for existing efficiently. A ripple of agitation passed through the Thalrex delegation. The Chancellor raised a claw. Silence fell instantly. Efficiency, he repeated. A predatory trait. The chamber lights shifted subtly, from neutral white to judgment amber. Elias felt it in his spine. This was no longer arbitration. This was theater. Behind the primary dais, two massive forms detached from the shadows. Council sentinels, constructed of black meta-alloy and wrapped in distortion fields. They were not soldiers but instruments, used rarely and only for enforcement of council decrees. Each stood 4 meters tall, faceless save for a narrow slit of blue sensor light. Elias's pulse quickened, but his expression did not change. Chancellor, he said carefully, executing a diplomatic envoy violates Foundational Accord 3. The MYRR flickered in uneasy hues. HFY Era's frills settled into a pale, chilling stillness. The council has voted. The star map above them shifted again, now displaying a live quantum relay feed. Elias saw, reflected faintly in the polished floor, the faint ghost image of Earth's orbital network. His transmission channel was still active. They were watching. Good. You misunderstand. HFY Era continued. This is not execution. This is demonstration. The sentinels stepped onto the dais. Gravitic clamps locked around Elias's arms before he could consciously react. The force fields hummed, pinning him upright without crushing him. He felt the microfilaments in his uniform activate, scanning for trauma. The chamber grew unnaturally quiet. Even species without eyes focused on him. Elias forced himself to breathe slowly. You believe fear will force us to retreat, he said. It will not. The Chancellor's voice dropped lower. You mistake us, human. We believe your species must be taught consequence. Above them, space bent. A sphere of white plasma began to coalesce in midair, drawn from contained fusion matrices embedded within the chamber's core. It started as a pinprick of brilliance, then expanded, swirling in controlled turbulence. The temperature within it climbed into stellar thresholds. Elias felt the heat even through atmospheric dampening fields. He thought of Earth's oceans, of rain on steel rooftops, of the first time humanity looked at the night sky and wondered what was out there. He did not want to die, but he understood the moment. He lifted his chin toward the relay projection. If you do this, he said clearly, voice carrying through translation matrices into 1,000 languages, you will teach us something about you. The plasma sphere descended slowly, casting blinding light across alien faces, and we will respond in kind. The sentinels tightened their fields. The plasma touched him. There was no immediate pain, only a sensation of absolute brightness, as if every nerve had become a filament of fire. The nanomedical systems in his uniform attempted emergency intervention, flooding his bloodstream with countermeasures that vapor. From Earth's perspective, the image fractured into static as sensors overloaded. Within the council hall, Elias Ryan burned. His body disintegrated molecule by molecule, reduced to ionized vapor in less than 2 seconds. No ash remained, no bone, only a faint scorch mark on the black stone dais. The plasma sphere collapsed into nothing. Silence held. Even the Thalrex seemed momentarily stunned by the finality of it. HFY Era turned slowly toward the relay projection. Let this serve as correction, he declared. The transmission cut. Across human space. On Earth, Mars, Luna, Titan, and 100 distant colonies. The final image froze, a burst of white light swallowing a solitary human figure. For several long seconds, no one moved. Then, in command centers and private homes alike, comprehension settled like gravity. They had not detained him. They had not expelled him. They had burned him alive. And somewhere deep within humanity's collective memory, beneath centuries of war and fragile peace, something ancient and resolute stirred awake. The recording reached Earth in fragments of light. Quantum entanglement relays did not transmit images the way ancient radio once had. They transmitted states, collapse probabilities reconstructed into sight and sound by machines that understood the mathematics of reality itself. But even the most advanced reconstruction algorithms could not soften what the Council had done. In the Terran Strategic Command Complex beneath Mare Imbrium, the final frame hovered above a circular table of matte black composite. Ambassador Elias Rhine stood bathed in white plasma. Then the image dissolved into cascading error glyphs. Silence pressed in on the room. Admiral Hannah Okoye stood with her hands clasped behind her back, posture rigid, eyes fixed on the fading projection. She had known Elias. They had shared a transport once from Mars to Luna, speaking not politics, but of Earth's oceans and the smell of rain. He had laughed easily. Now there was no body to return. Athena, the Defense Strategic Intelligence, spoke first. Its voice manifested as a calm contralto from every speaker at once. Signal termination confirmed. Ambassador Elias Rhine, biological status, non-viable. Probability of survival, 0. President Mateo Alvarez appeared as a holographic presence above the far end of the table, patched in from the executive orbital station. His expression was carefully neutral. Was there any procedural warning? He asked. None, Athena replied. Council vote appears to have been concluded prior to public session. Execution apparatus was prepositioned. So this was not spontaneous, Okoye said quietly. No, Admiral. It was premeditated. Around the table sat the Joint Chiefs of the Terran Union, Fleet Command, Colonial Defense, Cyber Warfare Directorate, Terraforming Authority, even civilian infrastructure oversight. Humanity did not silo survival. Everything connected. Minister Adebayo from Colonial Expansion leaned forward, voice tight. They executed a diplomat under flag of truce. That violates every interspecies accord. Yes, Alvarez said. It does. The word war was not spoken. It did not need to be. Across human space, the reaction was not immediate rage. It was something colder. On Earth, billions watched the replay. In Nairobi, in Sao Paulo, in New Mumbai, in the floating Pacific arcologies, in the ice-buried cities of Antarctica. On Mars, workers in the Valles Marineris shipyards paused mid-task. On Titan, methane refinery crews gathered around communal displays. There were no riots, no screaming crowds, only stillness. Humanity had seen death before. Entire generations had grown up with a historical memory of global wars, ecological collapse, pandemics. They knew what uncontrolled fury cost. But this was different. This was not an accident of conflict. This was an execution meant to intimidate. And intimidation was a language humans understood intimately. Back in Luna's bunker, Admiral Okoye finally turned from projection. Fleet readiness. Athena responded instantly. Official fleet assets are at 72% combat deployment capability. Unofficial assets are at 89%. A few heads in the room shifted at that word. Unofficial. President Alvarez folded his hands. Define unofficial. Athena did not hesitate. Black registered defense platforms hidden within asteroid belts of Sol, Proxima Centauri, Tau Ceti, and Epsilon Eridani. Autonomous drone foundries embedded within gas giant magnetospheres. 26 Prometheus-class dreadnoughts maintained under deep stealth protocols. Minister Adebayo exhaled slowly. We told the Council those projects were canceled. We told them development ceased, Okoye corrected. We did not specify stockpiles. The Prometheus initiative had begun decades earlier, after humanity's first border clash with the Thalrex Combine. Officially, Earth had apologized for the misunderstanding. Unofficially, engineers had been told to prepare for a day when apology would not be enough. Relativistic strike platforms capable of accelerating tungsten projectiles to near-light velocity. Gravitic shear cannons that destabilize shield harmonics. Experimental tunneling drives allowing short-range hyperspace insertion inside defensive perimeters. Humanity had not wanted war, but it had prepared for it. President Alvarez looked around the table. Civilian projections? Athena's holographic avatar flickered into view, an abstract lattice of shifting geometry. If full-scale interstellar war commences, Projected human casualties range between 8 and 12 billion across 20 years, depending on Council coalition cohesion. The number landed heavily. Humanity's total population across all colonies stood at 36 billion. Even a victorious war would cost oceans of blood. Minister of Infrastructure Sato spoke softly. If we do nothing, high probability of escalating sanctions, territorial seizures, and eventual forced containment of human expansion, Athena replied. Long-term survival probability decreases by 41%. Okoye stepped forward. They burned him alive, she said, not loudly but with unmistakable force. Not in battle, not by accident, as spectacle. She looked at the president. If we allow that precedent to stand, every human envoy is a target. Every colony negotiates under threat of execution. Alvarez's jaw tightened slightly. We will not respond in anger, he said. Okoye held his gaze. No, sir. A beat. We will respond in totality. The command codes required 3 layers of biometric confirmation. President, Admiral, AI co-authorization. The holographic interface unfolded like a blooming flower above the table. Red gold glyph spun in slow rotation. Operation Prometheus. Lock status. Alvarez placed his hand against the authentication field. Light rippled outward. Okoye followed. Athena's core processing nodes synchronized across quantum arrays spanning 4 star systems. Triad authorization confirmed. Athena announced. The glyph shifted from red to white. Prometheus was no longer theoretical. Orders propagated through entangled relays faster than light could travel. In the asteroid belt of Sol, what appeared to be inert mining platforms split open like metallic seeds. Armor plates rotated outward, revealing concealed railgun spines and launch bays filled with autonomous strike craft. Around Jupiter, dormant research stations ignited fusion cores and shed their civilian shells, unveiling spinal-mounted gravitic cannons. In deep orbit above Mars, 26 immense hulls shimmered into visibility as stealth fields powered down. The Prometheus-class dreadnoughts were not elegant. They were angular, armored, built around weapon cores large enough to split moons. On Titan, drone foundries accelerated production cycles. Millions of microfighters began printing in synchronized waves, each guided by adaptive combat AIs. Across human space, civilian networks received a single encrypted advisory. Defense Protocol Omega activated. Shelter preparations commence. There was no panic. Humanity had drilled for this. Children in orbital habitats moved calmly to reinforce sections. Terraforming crews on distant worlds shifted to hardened bunkers. Hospitals began stockpiling plasma and nanomedical reserves. Humanity was not surprised by violence. It was prepared for it. Back in the Luna bunker, Athena projected a strategic map of the Perseid Corridor, the region that had sparked the conflict. Red markers indicated Thalrex shipyards, hyperspace gates, command nodes. Blue markers multiplied rapidly. Our objective? Minister Adebayo asked. Okoye did not hesitate. Decapitation, she said. Military infrastructure only. We dismantle their capacity to wage war before the Council can unify a response. And civilian populations? Sato asked. Off limits. Alvarez said immediately. Okoye nodded once. We are not here to exterminate. We are here to ensure this never happens again. Athena overlaid casualty projections for targeted strikes. Initial offensive window, 6 hours. Probability of disabling 70% of Thalrex fleet assets within first 24 hours, 83%. And the Council? Alvarez asked. Fragmented. Athena replied. Several species will hesitate to engage immediately. They perceive humanity as economically valuable. Okoye allowed herself the faintest, humorless smile. Let them perceive us accurately. The final message transmitted from Earth before fleets entered hyperspace was not a declaration of war. It was a statement addressed to the Galactic Council. The recording showed President Alvarez standing against the backdrop of Earth, blue oceans turning slowly beneath him. You executed our ambassador under flag of peace, he said evenly. You called it correction. His eyes did not waver. We call it an act of war. The transmission ended. No further communication followed. In deep space beyond the heliopause, human fleets aligned in perfect silence. Hyperspace apertures formed like fractures in reality. Iridescent tears edged in gravitational distortion. Admiral Okoye stood on the bridge of the dreadnought TSS Resolute, watching tactical feeds cascade across her displays. Fleet synchronization complete. Athena's distributed combat submines reported. Enemy detection probability? Okoye asked. Minimal. Thalrek's early warning arrays are calibrated for conventional transit vectors. We are not using them. The Prometheus-class ships were built around a dangerous innovation, short-range quantum tunneling drives that allowed insertion inside defensive perimeters at enormous energy cost. It was a technology humanity had never revealed. Until now. Okoye took one final breath. For Elias, someone whispered on the bridge, not as an order but as remembrance. Okoye's voice cut cleanly across the fleet-wide channel. All Terran forces, she said, execute. Space ruptured. Thousands of human warships vanished into hyperspace corridors. The war began before the Galactic Council could convene its next session. And as the first Terran strike group emerged in the heart of the Thalrek's frontier, the lesson Elias Rhine had promised began to unfold. The first Thalrek's shipyard died, without understanding why. In the Vraxel system, 14 light-years inside Thalrek's sovereign territory, orbital docks circled a swollen orange star. Hundreds of warships hung in skeletal frameworks. Cruisers mid-refit, destroyers stripped to armor ribs, carriers receiving new shield cores. The system's early warning arrays were oriented outward, scanning the hyperlane approaches. Humanity did not arrive from the hyperlanes. Space inside docking sphere three-folded inward, like a punctured membrane. 27 Terran strike vessels tunneled directly into low orbit. For 0.8 seconds, they existed in a state the Thalrek's sensors could not categorize. Then they became real. Contact anomaly internal, a Thalrek's tactical officer hissed, crest flashing ultraviolet alarm. It was too late. Terran relativistic lances fired first. Dense tungsten penetrators, no larger than shuttlecraft, accelerated to fractional light speed within spinal rail assemblies, crossed the void in microseconds. Shields calibrated for energy weapons failed catastrophically against kinetic impact at that magnitude. The first rod punched through Dockyard Ring Alpha. The ring ceased to exist. A bloom of expanding debris and vaporized metal swallowed 3 half-constructed cruisers and the supervisory command core in a single expanding sphere of incandescent ruin. Then the drone swarms deployed. From Terran carriers hidden behind the initial insertion wave, millions of autonomous microfighters erupted outward, each the size of a coffin, each driven by adaptive combat algorithms trained on centuries of human warfare. They did not dogfight. They overwhelmed. Point defense cannons tracked one target and were saturated by 50. Missile batteries fired and were intercepted mid-launch by micro-swarm interceptors. Electronic warfare pulses from Terran frigates sliced through Thalrek's coordination networks, injecting false telemetry and ghost signatures. Within 12 minutes, the Vraxel shipyard was reduced to molten wreckage. Human vessels did not linger. They tunneled out as abruptly as they had appeared, leaving only expanding clouds of debris and a transmission broadcast on all emergency channels. Military target neutralized. Civilian structures unharmed. The message was not a boast. It was a warning. News of Vraxel reached the Galactic Council during an emergency convocation already in progress. High Chancellor HFY stood at the center of the chamber where Elias Rhine had died. The scorch mark on the black stone floor had not yet been polished away. Holographic feeds flared to life one after another. Vraxel lost. Human strike signatures confirmed. Unknown drive mechanics. They bypassed outer defense grids entirely. The MYRR pulsed in agitated violet waves. The Avon delegates spoke over one another in sharp bursts of sound. HFY's frills flared crimson. Mobilize frontier fleets. Seal hyperspace corridors. Initiate Grand Armada assembly protocol. A Keth strategist interrupted. Chemical signals translating into metallic speech. Human vessels did not use corridors. A silence heavier than vacuum settled over the chamber. They emerged inside defended space. The strategist continued. Without detectable approach vector. The implication was unthinkable. If humanity could bypass hyperlane infrastructure, then centuries of galactic defensive doctrine were obsolete. HFY Era felt, for the first time since the execution, a flicker of uncertainty. Then we adapt, he said coldly. As they do. Human strikes cascaded outward in coordinated waves. In the Perseid corridor, Thalrex garrisons were dismantled within hours. Orbital platforms were not bombarded. They were surgically dismantled by precision gravitic shear cannons that twisted hull sections apart like paper. At the Keth Trade Nexus, an economic hub allied with the Council, human cyber warfare units infiltrated financial and logistics AIs, freezing military supply chains without firing a shot. Cargo vessels carrying munitions found the navigation cores locked, their engines refusing to engage. Humanity was not merely attacking ships. It was dismantling infrastructure. Across dozens of systems, a pattern became clear. Military shipyards, fleet command nodes, weapons depots, hyperspace gates, all targeted. Civilian population centers untouched. This restraint unsettled the Council almost as much as the ferocity. They could devastate entire worlds, murmured an Aven observer, reviewing casualty projections. Yet they do not. Not yet, HFY Era replied. 3 days after the execution, the Grand Armada assembled over Varelia. It was the largest coordinated fleet in recorded galactic history. Ships from 30 civilizations formed concentric defensive spheres around a Council world. Thalrex dread carriers bristling with plasma rays, Aven interceptor clouds shimmering like metallic flocks, MYRR energy constructs pulsing in synchronized resonance, Keth hive ships layered in ablative armor, thousands of warships. The Armada's unified command lattice activated, a distributed intelligence linking disparate species into a single tactical organism. They would not be surprised again. High Chancellor HFY Era addressed the assembled fleet. Humanity seeks to destabilize galactic order. We will demonstrate consequence. The words echoed differently now, less certain. Long-range sensors flared. Multiple gravitational anomalies detected at system periphery. How many? A pause. Thousands. Space fractured along a line that stretched across Varelia's outer orbit. One by one, then in torrents, Terran vessels emerged. They did not form a chaotic mass. They arranged themselves into disciplined geometry. Dreadnoughts at the core, cruisers in layered arcs, carriers behind armored screens. Drone clouds unfurled between hulls like metallic nebulae. At the forefront hung the massive silhouette of the TSS Resolute. Admiral Hannah Okoye stood on its bridge, watching the Grand Armada fill her tactical display. She had studied their doctrine for decades, their strengths, their redundancies, their overconfidence in central coordination. Athena, she said quietly, commenced Phase 1. Across the fleet, synchronized pulses of electronic warfare erupted. The Armada's unified lattice flickered. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then the MYRR energy construct began to desynchronize, their resonance fields clashing destructively. Aven interceptor wings received conflicting vector commands. Keth hive ships registered phantom targets inside their own formations. Human cyber warfare did not overpower the Armada. It fractured it. Now, Okoye ordered. The Grand Armada fired first. Beams of coherent stellar energy lanced across space. Plasma torpedoes streaked toward the Terran formation in brilliant arcs. Gravitic distortions rippled outward, attempting to crush human ships within localized wells. Terran forward shields flared white under impact. Several cruisers vanished in expanding blossoms of fire. On the Resolute, deck plating trembled as a Thalrex plasma barrage washed across its armor. Damage report. Forward shield at 63%. Hull integrity stable. Okoye did not flinch. Return fire. Terran dreadnoughts unleashed spinal gravitic cannons. Instead of projecting energy outward, they collapsed space inward, creating localized singularity pulses that detonated amid Armada formations. Capital ships twisted violently as gravitational vectors shifted unpredictably. Relativistic lances followed, punching through shield harmonics that had never been calibrated for kinetic strikes of such velocity. Drone swarms surged forward like a living storm. The battle devolved into chaos. For 18 hours, Varelia's sky burned. Ships collided. Debris fields expanded. Emergency transmissions overlapped in a cacophony of languages and frequencies. The Grand Armada fought with ancient experience and overwhelming numbers. Humanity fought with adaptability and calculated fury. When MYRR Energy Construct attempted to stabilize the command lattice, Terran quantum viruses infiltrated the synchronization algorithms, forcing a cascading feedback that disabled entire wings of ships. When Aven interceptors attempted flanking maneuvers, Terran predictive AIs adjusted formation geometry in real time, denying them firing corridors. When Thalrex dread carriers advanced in brute force assault, human singularity missiles detonated along their approach vectors, tearing armor apart from within. Losses mounted on both sides. Entire Terran squadrons were annihilated, but the Armada's cohesion never fully recovered from the initial fracture. By the 17th hour, their formations were broken into isolated clusters. By the 18th, retreat signals pulsed across fractured command networks. The Thalrex flagship, Dominion's Claw, attempted to withdraw toward Varelia's planetary shadow. A relativistic lance pierced its engine core. The colossal vessel spun slowly, trailing vaporized atmosphere into space. On the bridge of the Resolute, silence fell as tactical overlays recalculated. Athena, Okoye said, Grand Armada combat capability, reduced by 78%. The AI replied, remaining vessels disengaging. The largest military force in galactic history had been shattered in a single engagement. Okoye opened a direct channel to the drifting Dominion's Claw. High Chancellor XYR Thale appeared. Scale scorched, one frill partially severed. You have destabilized everything, he hissed. Okoye's expression was carved from stone. You executed our diplomat under flag of peace, she replied. You called a demonstration. She gestured toward the wreckage filling Varelia's orbit. This is ours. She cut the transmission. Behind her, human officers stared at casualty readouts. Tens of thousands dead. Hundreds of ships lost. Victory did not feel triumphant. It felt irreversible. Across the galaxy, Council worlds watched the aftermath in stunned silence. Empires that stood unchallenged for millennia had been broken in less than a day. And for the first time since humanity joined the stars, the older civilizations understood something with chilling clarity. They had not burned a fragile upstart species in that chamber. They had ignited a power that had been waiting patiently for justification. War did not end at Varelia. It multiplied. The shattering of the Grand Armada did not collapse the Galactic Council. It fractured it. Some member civilizations withdrew immediately, declaring neutrality and sealing their borders. Others rallied in fury, forming splinter coalitions determined to stop what they now call the Terran Ascendancy. Humanity did not claim the title, but they did not reject it either. The long years. The war stretched across 7 standard cycles. Not a single decisive front, but dozens. In the outer Perseid systems, Thalrex loyalists waged guerrilla warfare, striking human supply lines and vanishing into asteroid fields. In the Zentari clusters, energy-based species turned entire stars into defensive traps, forcing Terran fleets into costly sieges. Humanity adapted. They deployed modular habitats behind advancing lines to support civilian evacuations. Terraforming ships were retrofitted into hospital arcs. Autonomous repair swarms followed every major engagement, reclaiming wreckage and rebuilding in orbit. They fought with relentless efficiency, but they bled. On Proxima Colony, a retaliatory council strike slipped through perimeter defenses and scorched half a continent. 11 million civilians died in under an hour. The footage spread across human space like a wound that would not close. For the first time since Elias Rhine's execution, rage nearly broke containment. Planetary defense commanders requested authorization for unrestricted retaliation. Population centers, infrastructure, cultural archives. Admiral Okoye refused. "We do not answer atrocity with annihilation," she said in a fleet-wide address. "We answer with victory." The words held. Barely. 2. The isolation of the Thalrex. As the war dragged on, alliances thinned. Economic networks collapsed. Hyperspace trade corridors became battlegrounds. Species dependent on interstellar commerce faced famine and resource crises. Humanity, with its distributed colonies and redundant supply chains, endured better than most. The Thalrex combined did not. Their frontier fleets were gone. Their industrial systems crippled. Their council allies either neutral or defeated. By the sixth cycle of war, Thalrex Prime stood nearly alone, shielded by the last remaining layers of planetary defense arrays. Terran fleets advanced system by system, dismantling resistance with grim inevitability. When they entered Thalrex core space, there was no grand announcement, only quiet inevitability. 3. The world in the crosshairs. Thalrex Prime orbited a red giant star swollen, near the end of its life cycle. The planet itself was vast and scarred, megacities rising like armored ridges across continents of iron-rich desert. Billions lived there, billions who had not stood in the council chamber. Terran fleets surrounded the system in a tightening sphere. Dreadnoughts aligned beyond effective planetary defense range. Carrier groups positioned at calculated intervals. Drone clouds shimmered like metallic halos. On the bridge of the TSS Resolute, Admiral Hannah Okoye stared at the targeting display projected across the forward viewport. Red markers blinked steadily across the planet's surface. Primary command nexus. Orbital shield regulators. Deep core military bunkers. And beneath them, faint blue overlays marking civilian density concentrations. Athena's voice was calm as ever. Planetary annihilation option remains viable. Estimated time to biosphere collapse. 42 minutes following initiation of crustal destabilization sequence. The weapon in question had never been used. A coordinated barrage of gravitic penetrators and mantle disruption warheads designed to fracture tectonic equilibrium. It would not merely bomb the planet. It would end it. President Alvarez appeared on the bridge via secure holographic channel. Status: full weapons lock. Okoye replied. Minimal remaining orbital resistance. Behind her, officers stood in rigid silence. Across human space, feeds from the fleet were being watched in real time. This was the moment the galaxy feared. The moment humanity could choose extinction. Alvarez's gaze shifted toward the planet, rotating below. "They burned him alive," he said quietly. "Yes," Okoye answered. Her eyes did not leave the targeting grid. Another pause. "What did he say, Admiral?" She swallowed once. "He said we would learn something about them, and respond in kind." "And what we learned?" Okoye watched the planetary overlays pulse, red for military, blue for civilian. She thought of Proxima Colony, of Aurelia's shattered orbit, of Elias Rhine standing alone beneath alien constellations. "That fear makes monsters," she said. On all sides. Silence stretched across the bridge. Athena's targeting reticles blinked steadily, awaiting confirmation. 4. The choice. On Thalrex Prime, High Chancellor Exwarthale stood within a reinforced command chamber carved deep beneath the planet's crust. The once proud leader now bore visible scars, fractured crest plating, dulled scales, a tremor in his limbs. He watched human fleet signatures encircle his world. For the first time in Thalrex recorded history, extinction was not theoretical. It was overhead. His advisors hissed conflicting counsel. Fight to the last, trigger planetary self-destruct failsafes, unleash bioengineered plagues upon Terran worlds in retaliation. Exwarthale raised a claw. Enough. He remembered the human ambassador's eyes. Not defiant, not pleading, certain. A lesson, the human had said. The Chancellor had believed the lesson would be submission. Instead, it had been consequence. He opened a transmission channel. On the Resolute, Athena interrupted the tension. Incoming planetary transmission. Origin, Thalrex High Command. The holographic image flickered to life. Exwarthale appeared diminished, framed by damaged command consoles. "We surrender," he said. The translator rendered the words with no embellishment. Across the bridge, a collective breath released. President Alvarez closed his eyes briefly. Just once. Okoye did not move. Terms, she said evenly. HFY Era lowered his head, a gesture of profound cultural submission. Immediate cessation of hostilities. Dissolution of the Thalrex military hierarchy. Acceptance of interstellar oversight. Reparations as negotiated. A pause. We will stand trial for the execution. The words carried weight beyond translation. Athena recalculated probabilities in real time. Compliance likelihood, high. The AI whispered privately to Okoye. The Admiral studied the alien leader for several seconds. Then she turned to her weapons officer. Stand down, planet killers, she ordered. Target military command structures only. There was no hesitation. Acknowledged. Terran weapons fired. Orbital defense platforms disintegrated under precision gravitic strikes. Surface-to-space arrays collapsed. Deep-core bunkers housing Thalrex War Command were neutralized with controlled penetrator bursts. The planet shook, but it did not break. Within hours, Terran occupation fleets established perimeter control. The war was over. V aftermath. The Galactic Council, as it had existed, dissolved within a year. Its authority had been shattered alongside the Grand Armada. In its place emerged a new interstellar assembly, structured with distributed power, strict protections for diplomatic envoys, and codified prohibitions against punitive execution. Human representatives sat at the drafting table. So did the Thalrex. High Chancellor HFY Era stood trial before a joint tribunal composed of multiple species, including humanity. He was sentenced not to death, but to permanent exile and confinement. Mercy again. On Virelia, the council chamber was rebuilt. The scorch mark at the center of the black stone dais was not erased. It was encased in crystal. A monument rose there, an abstract sculpture of light, and metal shaped vaguely like a human figure standing upright, chin lifted. Its inscription, written in 62 languages, read, "Restraint is not weakness, but mercy, when given power, is strength." 6. The memory. Years later, Admiral Okoye returned alone to Virelia. The chamber was quiet. Sunlight refracted through crystalline spires, scattering rainbows across the floor. Delegates moved peacefully through corridors once filled with accusation and flame. She stood before the preserved scorch mark. For a moment, she imagined Elias Rhine standing there again. "You were right," she murmured softly. Humanity had learned something, not only about alien fear, but about themselves. They had proven they could burn the stars if pushed, and they had proven they could choose not to. Across the galaxy, when disputes flared and tensions rose, civilizations remembered the day a single human diplomat was executed as spectacle, and how close the universe had come ending because of it. The lesson endured. Fire could destroy empires, but restraint could rebuild them.